I posted a picture on Instagram a little while ago of a dice pouch I made, a little drawstring bag, and I thought I would share with you guys the process of how I put that together because it got a lot of interest, so check it out. Feel free to use this pattern. I'll put it on my Etsy or Patreon, I still haven't decided. Make sure you're using some fairly thin material for your, I guess your pouch gusset is what you could call it. This is some deer that I've had lying around for a bit. If you end up using something heavier, it's just going to be harder to close and it's going to be a little more bulky, so everything will sit really nice with this. This is a 13/64 inch punch that I'm using. The punch that you use will probably totally depend on the lace that you use. This worked pretty good for the lace that I picked. It might have been just a little on the small side, but it was okay. I love this 4-in-1 punch. I'll link this and all the other tools in the description of the video. When you're doing these punches around the edges, it's hard to actually get it perfect with the Vegetan strip that I'm going to do. So one of these actually turned out perfect, the other was a little off, and I end up just doing some corrections with on the fly. Pretty simple pattern. I just wanted a pattern that I could use a lot of scrap leather, and in the end that I would have an option to carve the pouch. So I've got a Vegetan strip down the middle, and then I've got 2 half sides for scraps. Throwing some stitch grooves on there just so I can line my holes up better than anything else. Now realistically, I've got sewing machines. I could have done this with a sewing machine, but I felt I might as well show you guys the full process for most of you that don't have a sewing machine. Now after I get all this done, I'm going to set up for the leather carving. You guys have probably seen a lot of my leather carving videos before. If you haven't, there's a bunch on here. I was thinking of making this a separate video, but in the end I left it into this final video, and then I also put it in another little storytime video that I did recently that I'll probably post in the next couple of days. Again, I'll link all the tools that I'm using in the description down below, especially for the leather carving. It's really not that complicated as far as tools go. There's your stylus, your beveler, your backgrounder. I didn't even use a backgrounder, I just beveled everything, and your swivel knife, obviously. Leather carving certainly takes a lot of patience, but it's pretty rewarding once you get the finished product complete. I usually background all the background spots on the inside of my knots, but this time I decided just to bevel everything and then paint it. So it turned out fine. It was just something different instead of just the regular backgrounding I do. This pouch will be up on my Etsy store as well, this specific pouch. I'm not sure for how long, but until somebody buys it, I guess. Well, there you go. The carving's all done. Now it's time to make it pop a bit more by painting with dyes. I guess you could paint with paint as well, but if you're painting with dyes, then it's going to last longer and not rub off. It's a pretty tedious process, but it's pretty rewarding in the end. Now, if you just paint with dyes and then leave it, it doesn't really look finished. It looks a little, around the edges, it doesn't look quite as good as it could. So afterwards, we're going to put a resist on it and stain it, and it'll blend those edges really well. So there you go, we've got the die all painted in. There's a couple little mistakes, but they can be fixed up later with a bit of paint if we want to. I decided to use this Pro Resist for the first time. I don't know why I decided to use it for the first time on a video like this, but I figured it would be great. So spray the resist on, let it dry, and then we're going to put some gel antique on. Put a lot on, rub it everywhere really quick, rub away the excess, and it should look pretty good. I hope. Okay, well it doesn't look as good as I was hoping. Another coat. No, still too dark. That resist didn't really work very well, so this is the Pro Resist, and it's in the garbage. After that, we're going to use a little bit of Leather Balm Atom Wax as a finish. I just decided to use this one. Sometimes I use acrylic resin. I put it on the front and the back just to make sure it's all covered. I didn't show myself dyeing the back earlier, but I dyed the back as well. Once that's all dried, it's time to stitch it together. I use a blunt needle, I use some artificial sinew, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to start the pouch a little bit in from the edge, and then I'm going to stitch up to the edge and then back down, so it gives it a little more strength. I ended up just doing a running stitch all the way down the edge, so as I was saying, I start a little bit down, I stitch up to the edge, and then just do a running stitch all the way down, so it alternates between leather and lace, so there's like a cool looking stitch line going all the way down. I could have done it so it's just a solid stitch all the way down, but I just thought it looked better this way. I like how it pops. That's why I also use such a contrasting thread color. Now, as I was talking about before, because this is not done with the sewing machine and I can't perfectly line it up, I kind of guessed the 4-in-1 holes when I did the holes around the edge that we're stitching through right now. Now this first one actually amazingly lined up perfectly. There was exactly the same amount of holes on this one as the other one. I wasn't too worried about it because this is just a little video on how to put this pouch together. You may want to be really specific with your hole count and make adjustments before you go into the stitching process. The second half has a few extra holes. I think it has 3 extra holes actually. It's because the hide was a little stretchy and I just didn't notice when I was punching around the edge. So I just skip a hole now and then at the very end, and it works out fine. It's just not necessarily perfect, I guess. Really, if I wasn't telling you about it, you probably wouldn't even notice, so... But, yeah, so we're moving along. Time to speed this up. Now, when I get to the end, I do the same thing, but just reversed as I did at the beginning. I'm going to stitch all the way to the end, and then I'm going to backstitch a few, and then I'm going to knot it, and I kind of lace it through some of the stitches just to keep the cut end down. The stitch is definitely really simple. So we're going to start the other side. We're just going to blow through this. I'm sure you guys have figured out exactly what you need to do as far as the stitching goes. If you haven't, you can just look back at a couple spots where I did actually slow the video down. Right around here you can see that there's more holes at the end than there are for it to go together properly, so I'm start fudging it a little bit, which is fine. I just skipped a stitch twice and then it's all lined up. Now normally these holes would have been punched at the beginning of this process, but I just wanted to make sure everything lined up perfectly before I went ahead and punched them. So now that I've seen that it works, I will always punch the holes first before I dye it so that there's no little vegetan coloring on the inside. I'm using some Kodiak lace from Tandy here. It's really supple, it's nice. It takes a little bit of work getting the second lace through, but I think it worked out really nicely. It closes really easy, and it takes a little bit of effort to open it, so you know it's not going to open up on you and dump the contents all over the place. Now there's a few different ways you could close this pouch up. You could use one lace with a stopper, so you close the pouch with the loose lace and then you slide a stopper up to make sure it doesn't open. The stopper would just be something tight enough that it doesn't really slide easily on the lace, so it goes up to the top and doesn't move. But I like having two laces. I just like how it closes. Looks cool. That gives you extra bits to tie stuff off if you want to put some kind of little antler tips or wooden beads on it. I don't know, just adds character to your pouch if you've got more bits dangling off of it. Now putting the second lace in can be a bit annoying. You may need to use a stylus or just some patience to make sure you get it all the way in and around the pouch. And you may feel the need to make the holes bigger, but you should really experiment first, because part of this working so well is that it closes fairly easily and it stays closed. If the holes are too big, it will fall open, or at least there's a chance it'll fall open. You feel free to experiment, you know. Now we're in the home stretch here. We're just going to run the lace down the other side. Once we're finished lacing, we're going to knot the laces so that they can't be pulled through the holes. But we want to make sure that the bag opens fully. So you're going to have the bag fully open, and then you're going to knot right where it is at its fullest open point. Once we do that, we're going to, oh look at that, isn't that lovely? So we're going to get the knots in, and then once we've got the knots done, we're going to trim the laces. And you know, you could do something. You could put a bead here. You could, you know, throw some antler tips on this. You could braid a bit if you're really feeling super technical. You could cut that into 3 strands and braid each one. I did not. I just end up cutting them down, and then yeah, see how easy that closes? That's beautiful. Puff it out a bit, like as if it had something in there. Nice. Now, so we're going to cut the ends, and then we're going to split the ends. At least that's what I did. I ended up cutting the ends and splitting them just so they look kind of, you know, funky. So this is about the simplest thing you could do, I guess, other than nothing. I guess you could do nothing. So I'm just, yeah, I just split the ends, makes it look a little cooler. And yeah, we've got a pouch. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. As always, if you did, hit the thumbs up button, hit the notification button to make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. And until next time, keep on being creative in whatever it is you do.